The Summer Game Fest has concluded, and Larian Studios dropped a new Baldur's Gate 3 trailer, which we're going to take a closer look at in today's video. Now, some people were a little underwhelmed with the trailer, or maybe expected more news or a bigger showcase, which is fine, of course. But do keep in mind that we're still over 80 days away from official launch. Marketing will continue for the game, and speaking of that, the PC Gamer Show is only a few days from now on Sunday, June 11th, and Baldur's Gate 3 will also be making an appearance at that show as well. To what extent, we're not entirely sure. And if you do think that Larian's marketing is done after that show, I would say think again. Now, with all that said, we get to see in-game video footage that took place within the city of Baldur's Gate itself. And Larian also revealed a second antagonist, but I'm using the word antagonist a little bit loosely here because there's definitely going to be some ambiguity behind many of the characters in this game. Now, spoiler alert, kind of, as some of you may not want to know all of the public information that Larian has been and will continue to release. But Larian's director of publishing has said himself, "I promise you we wouldn't show you major spoilers. This thing is just much bigger and much more complicated than we'd ever show. So take that as you will, and let's jump right into it." So this first scene right here has us looking at this heavily fortified structure building castle looking place, and the main giveaway as to what this place is can be found right here at the bottom of the hanging banners. You can see the symbol of the Flaming Fist, and the Flaming Fist, for those who may be unfamiliar, are an army of mercenary soldiers that keep order in the city. Basically, at this point, it's the city's military for the most part. In Baldur's Gate 1, this Flaming Fist headquarters building is actually not a seaside building as it appears to be in Baldur's Gate 3. It is close to the harbor, but certainly not right on it. Now, in modern day Forgotten Realms, the Flaming Fist headquarters stands on a rocky islet in the harbor in a heavily fortified structure that's called the Sea Tower of Baldur. Now you can see this sea tower from an old cinematic that shows the city, and this building not only serves as the Flaming Fist headquarters, but also as a local prison and as a line of defense against those coming to or leaving the city by sea, as the sea tower not only has trebuchets all around it, but it also has a large chain that can be pulled up that will stop entry and exit from the city by sea.
Enver Gortash, swearest thou by Balduran's blade to defend the citizens of Baldur's Gate from enemies within and without?
So we have this character that's been introduced to us that's called Enver Gortash, and he's swearing an oath to the Flaming Fist to protect the citizens of Baldur's Gate basically from all enemies. Now I'm assuming that this scene takes place in the Flaming Fist headquarters because we just saw what appeared to be the entrance to it not too long ago. And right here actually appears to be Gale, which is kind of interesting to think about because why is Gale here watching Enver, swear an oath to the Flaming Fist? And likely the rest of the players' party is also here as well. So why do we really care about that? Well, we're going to find out a little bit more about that as the trailer presses on. Now, we did get a couple closer looks of these weird robotic automaton type creatures. And the first thing I noticed is they have a lot of, gold plated armor. It's a real fancy look, but also extremely intimidating. And there seems to be some symbology on them. I'm not exactly sure what it means. If you guys decipher anything, please let me know below in the comments. But what we can see pretty well are these statuettes on the automatons' helms. And at first glance, I thought they had griffins on their helms, but if you look at the head, it doesn't really look like an eagle. It looks more so like a hawk or a falcon, which would make me believe that this creature is actually a Hirakosphinx. And the interesting thing about Hirakosphinxes are that unlike griffins, these creatures feed on humans, even though griffins are also carnivorous. They don't typically feed on humans, they feed on horses, which is their primary diet. I just looked all this stuff up on the wiki. Hirakosphinxes are evil and they love to eat on humanoid creatures and humans, and they also love to covet treasure and gold and things of that nature, which is interesting because these automatons are really they have that rich treasury look to them. You put the two and two together and it just makes sense. Now we did just see a somewhat aerial shot of the city of Baldur's Gate, and this down here is of course the lower city, and everything past that giant wall over there is the upper city. And actually, while we're talking about the upper city, you can see right here, I'll have the camera zoom in on it. I'm pretty sure that that is actually for Baldur's Gate 1 players, Ducal Palace, but it's called High Hall, which is the government building, the main government building in the city where the dukes have their offices, where there's a court system and all sorts of governmental activities. Very important to Baldur's Gate 1, and I'm assuming it's going to be important in Baldur's Gate 3 as well. Now down here front and center, we have the Harbormaster's office, or the Harbormaster's building, and the Harbormaster is currently a lawful neutral human man by the name of Darius Kalinthros. And Darius, and of course anyone who works for him, they run the port operations and the taxation. Now to the left of the Harbormaster's office, and I'm a little bit less sure about this one, but I feel like I'm right, is the Water Queen's house, and it's this building right here. You can see, I have no idea what that is, but it kind of gives like a little bit of temple vibes here. And the Water Queen's house is the oldest temple in the city of Baldur's Gate, and it's a temple to Umberlee, the Queen of the Depths, the goddess of the sea, the evil goddess of the sea. And fishermen and sailors will typically come to the temple of Umberlee to pay homage and say some prayers and try to get some blessings before they go out to sea, in hopes that Umberlee will be kind to them and not destroy their boat when they're out in the ocean. And we actually got to see and experience both of these buildings in the original Baldur's Gate game. As you can see right here, we have the Harbormaster's building, which does look similar to the BG3 version. And then over here across the way, we have the Water Queen's house, and yeah, that's in a different position than the way Larian is portraying it in Baldur's Gate 3, but things have changed over the year with the lore of the city and the locations of different buildings. So yeah, I think that's the start of the Water Queen's house right here, the Water Queen Temple. And you know, in the Descent into Avernus adventure module, it says the house clings to its enormous pier like a monster of the deep, its stone walls trailing over the side and descending down beneath the waves and river mud. And you can see right here, it looks like we have stone walls going down into the bay, which is the Chianthar River, very close to the actual sea. Now, while we're here, just look at the city. It honestly is giving the vibes that we're going to be able to walk basically the city in its entirety. Now, don't quote me on that, but that's kind of the vibe that Larian gave with this trailer, is we're going to be on the streets here, walking up and down in all the different districts. Perhaps Larian will block off a few streets, which would be probably okay because the city is gigantic, but I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of getting the vibe that we're going to be exploring or be able to go anywhere that we want in the city of Baldur's Gate. Now, the scene right after this, which we saw earlier, I do want to quickly talk about, because some people will probably see that and think that it's some crazy infernal devil writing or something like that, but this is actually just the Thorass alphabet, which is the most common alphabet used by humans. And I did decipher the first part right here, and all it says is menu. If one of you guys really wants to, you can try to decipher the rest of the menu right here, but I'm like 99.9% sure it's just going to be different dishes that you'll be able to order at a restaurant. There's a lot of these little Thorass alphabet things that you can decipher in early access, and none of them have turned out to be anything too crazy. You'll also notice, of course, that we have an automaton walking right here, and yeah, there's a lot of dead folks on the ground, which is quite interesting. And actually, back in that aerial shot, you can see automatons in different areas. I think that's one right there. But wait, we have one more thing to quickly talk about, and shout out to Lycos on my Discord server for pointing this out. What the heck is that thing right there? It looks like some lizardy dragon type creature. Is this the first Dragonborn that we've seen in the game? Could be. Might be a little small for a Dragonborn. Not entirely sure. Maybe it's lizard folk, although wouldn't it be kind of rare to have lizard folk walking around in clothes in the city of Baldur's Gate? I don't know. This is the Forgotten Realms after all, and the city of Baldur's Gate. Something to think about. All right, I'm going to let it play out for a few seconds, and we'll talk about it.
You are soon to witness the people of Baldur's Gate granting me complete power over them.
So that was Enver Gortash, and he said, "You're soon to witness the people of Baldur's Gate granting me complete power over them." And then in these scenes, while he's talking, we can see these, what I'm calling at this time, these magical automatons walking down this red carpet area. And I'm assuming that this takes place in the Flaming Fist headquarters, as the rug looks very similar to the one that we saw in the beginning. You can see another Flaming Fist banner hanging in the background here, but it also does look really fancy in here, and you can see some noble folk. So I guess it's possible it could be some other government building. But what really interests me here are these two characters, and I have no idea who they are, but if I had to guess, they're probably patriars of the city. They're clearly nobles. And patriars are, I would say the easiest way to look at it would be, think of American politics and think of the Senate and the House of Representatives or something like that. And in Baldur's Gate, there are 50 Patriars. I think I'm getting that right. And above the Patriars are the Council of Four, which are the Dukes. And then there's the Grand Duke, who has the ultimate authority. But I think these two are probably Patriars. You have a dwarf right here and then some elf lady, but their facial expressions kind of say it all here. This guy looks really worried and concerned about whatever's going on, while this elf lady seems kind of content, maybe even a bit happy. So this probably signifies a divide in opinion, a divide in thought in the city with the current ongoing events with, you know, Enver and these automatons being all over the city, you know, ruling everything. So yeah, that's kind of interesting.
A new age is upon us. Gods have mercy on those who would stand in our way.
God have mercy on those who would stand in our way. So clearly, Gortash, even if he's maybe saving the city from something, he's not willing to, you know, show any mercy to anybody that stands in his way, which is probably anybody who has a different opinion, just like we talked about with the dwarf and the elf lady right there. So it's kind of interesting to see how that dynamic will play out. You know, two different political sides and different citizens from different walks of life. It's going to be cool to experience that in the game. But the news right here is Jason Isaacs. And some of you guys, if you don't recognize the name, if you're really good, you may recognize the face, maybe the eyes a little bit, because this is the actor for Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series, and he is playing as Gortash. So right after the no mercy statement, if you stand in our way, we can see somebody got, you know, their head kicked in here or something like that. And the Flaming Fist seems to be kind of, you know, standing in an authoritative position, you know, demanding that people listen to them is kind of the vibe that I'm getting right here. She might even be kicking this guy. I just noticed that right there. And hey, shout out to Jaboon Fade. For all of you Astarion lovers out there, Jaboon on my Discord server pointed out that I think that's Astarion right there. You can see his armor, his light armor, and then his white hair. So he's hidden back there somewhere watching all these events transpire. Now, the interesting thing about this scene is we do have a gigantic gate right here. I don't know if it's the Basilisk gate, which is probably the gate that we'll be entering the city from, but I do see this stone statue right here. And the Basilisk gate is, of course, known for having stone statues of prior dukes of the city.
Away. A mad dog understands the yank of the leash and the hand of its master, but it cannot be an equal. You can be my equal.
So Gortash is offering an alliance with the player character in their party. You can, of course, see Gale and Shadowheart right here. And with Larian Studios and a CRPG, this is, of course, going to be a choice. You'll probably even be able to attempt to kill him on the spot if you want to try that. Or you can join with him, go against him. There's probably a bunch in between as well.
A brittle alliance can never be mended. It can only break. I want to lead this city to glory, not scorch its earth.
He wants to lead the city to glory, not scorch it earth. So I do believe him when he says that, even if he is, you know, probably an evil character, because he probably wants to be in a position of power of the city. And if the city is destroyed and there's nothing really left of it, then he has nothing to rule. So I believe him when he says that, but I think his pathway for getting to that position is probably not exactly on the morally good side of the spectrum.
Friends, allies, to my side. Let us usher in a new dawn.
Let's usher in a new dawn. Now, some of you guys might have caught this, but we can actually see what's on the TV right here. And let me bring over my program and we can zoom in and actually read it. So, Steel Watch, your time has come. Friends, allies to my side, let us usher in a new dawn. So, Steel Watch appears to be the name of these automatons. We've been calling them automatons, but now I think we can call them the Steel Watch. And then we have up here, which is a lot harder to make out. And it says, when Gortash is walking to his office and sees a destroyed Steel Watcher on the roof, and in parentheses, will not be triggered if Control Center has been destroyed and all the Steel Watchers are dead. So we're kind of seeing this conditional disqualifier to where if you destroy the Control Center and kill all the Steel Watchers, you'll never get to see this particular scene where Gortash says, Steel Watch, your time has come. And that's one of the greatest things about Baldur's Gate 3, and even in early access, is you can play through the game 5, 6, 7 times and you'll still will not have experienced all of the possible scenes because there's so many little different conditional requirements for certain scenes to proc, and then other things that will, you know, disqualify you from seeing a particular scene. And that just adds a ton of replayability and excitement to all of your choices. And then we have a few shots of the city of Baldur's Gate, but these actually confuse me much more than the first couple that we saw. We're clearly looking over at Duskhawk Hill right here, and the tumble down district of the outer city is just past the wall. You can see Sorcerous Sundries, which we're going to get a better view of it here in a second. But then what the heck is this building right here? We have this, you know, red and yellow symbol. I can't really make it out. And then what is this? You know, initially you would think the Low Lantern, because the Low Lantern is a tavern that is on a ship that no longer sails, but that's out in the harbor, not up here on this level of the city. And then I also see this right here, and I almost see a mermaid. Do you guys see that? Almost looks like a mermaid. And if that's a mermaid, then this would probably be the Blushing Mermaid. I'm not sure why it has like the whole ship theme to it now, but you know, things change over time, and taverns grow and cities grow and buildings change. So I don't know. I guess I'm leaning towards that being a mermaid right now, and this being the Blushing Mermaid, and that of course being Sorcerous Sundries. And once again, you just see all these streets, and it's pretty apparent that we're going to be walking, you know, a lot of the city, at least the lower city. I would imagine the upper city too.
The city is mine!
Now, I'm not entirely sure where this scene takes place, but I woke up this morning and I have a guess now. You can see this loot right here, which probably signifies that this is a tavern of some sort. So let's take a guess and guess that this is the classic Elfsong tavern from not only Baldur's Gate 1, but also the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance ARPG games. Let's jump over to Baldur's Gate 1 and have a quick look. So you can see the Elfsong tavern right here, and it has a mug as its symbol. So not necessarily a loot, but that of course could change over time. The loot also kind of, you know, works with Elfsong. The 2 and 2 go together. But if we look up here, there's also this little middle area with like some sort of fountain. Now there's not a statue on it like we can see in BG3, but of course this could have undergone some renovations, and that statue is very close to the Elfsong Tavern, so I'm thinking that it's quite possible that that particular BG3 scene could be somewhere in this area right here in the lower city, and that might be the Elfsong Tavern. And then we have this beautiful in-game image of Sorcerous Sundries, the most recognizable shop in all of Baldur's Gate, of course due to its stained glass dome ceiling. And if I open up Baldur's Gate 1, you can see Sorcerous Sundries. This is your stop for all of your magical needs, the most popular magical shop in the city of Baldur's Gate. And in Baldur's Gate 3, it's going to be owned by a character named Rivlin Blackhand, who got his black hand from battling a demon, or so he says. But be careful, because Rivlin's apprentice is, I think, a gnome, maybe a halfling. I think they'd be extremely offended if they're watching this video, named Gulligan, and Gulligan actually works for the Guild, which is a criminal organization in the city. So be careful if you shop there, but it should be a pretty good shop with really good items.
Ready to call you enemy. What do you say? Shall we be allies?
It's not over yet. We have one more scene.
You said it was under control.
It isn't you I answer to, Gortash.
This is, of course, Ketheric Thorm, which was the big reveal of Larian's most recent trailer before this one. And the interesting thing about this scene, well, one, Ketheric Thorm and Gortash are in some sort of, league with each other. Maybe not really on good terms with each other, probably have different goals, but they're working together in some way, shape, or form. Gortash says, I thought you had this under control, and then Ketheric's like, I don't answer to you, so shut the hell up. The interesting thing about this scene is, where the heck are they? It almost looks like they're on like a nautiloid ship. Is that a brine pool down there? But then it also kind of looks like brimstone or sulfur, so maybe they're in the hells of some sort. There's just so many possibilities with the story of Baldur's Gate 3. It's really hard to come up with a concrete theory. There's so many complexities, just like Larian's director of publishing said earlier, that they're not releasing any major spoilers because this story is just way too complex. You're not going to be able to figure things out. So anyways, if we look into the description of the video, we can learn a little bit more about Gortash, a politician raised by a devil. And actually over on Twitter, we also have a post from Larian that says, Lord Enver Gortash freed himself of his bonds to envision wonders and become a master of both men and mechanisms. This guy is, leading Steel Watchers, these automatons. He's got this mechanical magical arm. It's making me think a lot about the Artificer class, which is not a player's handbook class, but it is a D&D 5th edition class. Not entirely sure, but Larian seems to be kind of teasing it, so something to keep in mind. And then on this tweet, we have the picture of Jason right here, and it says, it was a thrill to join the Baldur's Gate universe, but I fear that the magnificent Lord Enver Gortash is being mischaracterized as a villain. In a brutal world of betrayals and butchery, he's learned to lie better and backstab first. The joy in voicing him, apart from the obvious pleasure in getting to look so glorious, was that the creative team and I got to play loose enough to find ways that he could enjoy the ride and make the players hate him more. So really interesting quote out of Jason here. You know, mischaracterizing Gortash as a villain. A lot of ambiguity going on here. It's going to be really hard to figure out the true motives of a lot of these characters that we interact with. Last few things to quickly throw out there for you guys to think about. Take a look at Gortash's arm. There are some theories out there suggesting that this could be the hand of Vecna, and does kind of look like that could be an eye right there in the middle. I don't think it is, but it's a really cool theory to think about and consider, but especially now that we know that Gortash has this special mechanical prowess to make things, and he's the leader of these Steel Watchers. He probably made this himself. At least that's what I'm thinking. Now let's also take a quick look at his robes right here. And you can see these weird devilish type symbols. And we know that Gortash was raised by a devil. Now shout out to Red Celt. On the live stream today, Red Celt is a moderator of the channel, brought up the idea that this could be Gargoth. And if we pull up the Forgotten Realms wiki so I can quickly just show you, Gargoth, originally known as Gargoth and sometimes called Astaroth or Gormoth Soul Drinker, was a former archdevil and the Faerunian demigod of betrayal and political corruption. We know that Gortash is this political player, and he was raised by a devil. This just seems like the perfect match for Gortash's character. And also, Gargoth plays a pretty big role in the city of Baldur's Gate. Actually, in the Descent into Avernus adventure module, Gargoth is being kept in the Shield of the Hidden Lord, which is an artifact hidden underneath one of the Duke's estates. I won't get into any spoilers on that, but Gargoth has ties to the city of Baldur's Gate. So a lot of things are matching up here. Really interesting to think about. Now, thank you all so much for watching. I know I rambled a little bit, but I wanted to get this video out because my live stream got taken down when we went over a few things. A lot of copyright claims whenever you do, you know, the game awards and stuff like that because of all the music. So happy to get this video out. I'm probably going to do a deeper dive into some of this stuff, such as Gargoth here and Gortash. Please leave anything that you come up with down below in the comments. I will be reading them all, and I know the community has some great suggestions. So if we all come together as one mind, we can figure out things much easier. Have a good one.